Okay, I think this is live now. I'm just waiting for YouTube to queue up. Okay. All right, we are live. What is going on, world? Hope all is going well. Kilo Maltangon here, hanging out for a little late night rambling, a little bit more of these wonderful wonderings, as I like to consider them, and sitting with some really interesting things around synchronicities today. And what I identify as the universal language found in correspondences. So that's a whole mouthful. Let me explain. So synchronicities, as Jung talks about it, are these different events that happen. And there is a reason that these things happen. And where they tie into is a relationship that the observer has with a phenomena that reinforces something. Now, where that gets to blend in with the idea of what a universal correspondence is that there is ever and always a conversation that's happening, whether it's internally within the chatter of the monkey mind, whether it is more soulful connections and communications, whether it is something that's happening around us that reinforces or affirms something that's happening within. In fact, the Hawaiian people have a practice which is called kilo. It is the mindful observation of nature, of the world around us, which can tell us a lot about the patterns of nature, the different types of clouds, where the wind is coming from, the type of rain, the warmth of the sun. I mean, even to the intricacies of what's happening within the world, uh, bugs, birds, whatever's coming up. And so as this happens, it's really interesting to see, because what inevitably then we can observe is a correspondence between what's happening within inside of ourselves as is reflected by what's happening outside of us. So synchronicities, for example, this morning, I had a friend staying over, and he and I have had a number of conversations. He's another dad at the school that the boys go to. And we were talking about some things, and it was a really interesting synchronicity that came up today. And so we were talking about, we're both into the esoteric, occultism, just general wisdom in all the different forms that it comes in. And so I was recommending a series called the Zohar, which is sort of the collection of, a part of it is Hebrew mysticism. And so that spurred a conversation, and we started to talk about that a little bit. And he came back and said, well, have you heard of the Bhagavad Gita? And I was like, why, yes, I have. And he's like, oh, how do you know about that? And I was like, well, I had, back in 2016, been working with a mystic, and we went through a whole process, and there was a name that came up in the process, one that I wasn't familiar with at all, which was Aruna. And I scoured then the internet for any kind of sign or anything that was near that name, which led to Arjuna, which is the protagonist in this story, in this book, the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about him and his experiences. And so he had this stunned look. And mind you, this is like, whatever, 7:45 in the morning. We've just both had banana pancakes that I had cooked up, and we're both getting ready to head out to our respective appointments. And so he had this stunned look on his face, and he was saying, no way. Because just about 10 minutes prior to that, he was talking about a prophecy that he had been given, and how it was quite cryptic, because it was given in a way that the literal translation, and when we start to go into older texts, when we start to look at everyday life, this is where the whole correspondency piece comes into play. So synchronicity this morning was that we had an event that was powerful and reinforced for the both of us, as well as affirmed for him the legitimacy of this prophecy. And so as that happens, then he receives this prophecy, and the fulfillment of that came into play when I had said this to him, because he, as he received then this prophetic message, was very similar, given a name that led to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, which, mind you, is a pretty, at least here in Hawaii, a pretty obscure reference, let alone specific character, which was a synchronicity. It was something that was reflecting both our own inner worlds as well as having an external experience. And so as that happened, then we both have this moment, and he has this just profound look of awe and of wonder on his face, and he says, "You're the other part of this prophecy," which was kind of his last words before he went out the door, because he had to leave and I had to go. So to be continued on this. However, where this gets to be interesting is when we start to have these synchronicities. And mind you, synchronicities are not always going to be positive, meaning that there is a whole depth to us. And when I say they're not always positive, it doesn't mean that, it means that we will not always experience it as positive. And synchronicities can also act as warnings, sort of early warning devices, if you will. Synchronicities can lead us in a direction, and that direction often can be thought of instantaneously as something that's positive and good for us. And at the same time, these events reinforce something that's happening within. And so it's upon us to really discern. I mean, I have no idea what that prophecy is. Do I automatically assume that it's going to be something that is positive for all involved? I mean, I kind of do. Just the sense I had of it intuitively is that it is a positive thing. And I'm going to use my discernment on it. Now, where that can also come into play is with this whole concept of universal correspondences, which is sort of part 2 of this conversation, because our entire breakfast over banana pancakes, as my 5-year-old just sat there listening and really wanting more attention than I had been giving him, which I made it up for after the fact, was around the dreamscape, which is a really interesting area, a nexus of both the psychic, which is a realm of information, goes up dimension in terms of our more this realm of mentality, as well as empathic, tied to astral, and on this specific reality line and lane of reality that we experience. And so in all of that, then the dreamscape's interesting, because we can encounter our subconscious, we can encounter our superconscious mind, we can encounter interdimensional beings, we can encounter spirits and disincarnate, entities. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in all of that. It's interesting. I just noticed that my printer light just turned on. Anywho, so as we go into that conversation, because one of his intuitive talents, and I talk about that often, however, one of his intuitive talents is related to the dreamscape, something that I call a dream walker. And so each of these, primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, have names to them as well. And so he's a dream walker. And so he's also able to interpret dreams. And when someone is talking about it, tie his awareness to the thread of information that that dream has and holds. And so as we're talking about that, we also talk about how that exists in our lives as well. And so today I'm driving around and I was just getting started with my day, and I start to hear a little sound on the back right passenger wheel, like metal grinding on metal. I'm like, shit, that's not a good sound. And so the entire day that I had planned came to a screeching halt as I also halted and parked into a parking lot, popped open my laptop, and then made an appointment for servicing next week. That was the earliest I could get it. Sounds like it's the brake pads, so it's nothing that's imminent in terms of the danger. Yet the sooner that I take care of it, the better for the longevity of my vehicle. And vehicle is where it comes to, because looking at, for example, Aboriginal cultures, the waking is our dreaming, and the dreaming is when we're really woke. And so there is this really interesting concept of what reality really is. Yet, what if we applied the same methodologies to dream interpretation? If then, for example, in a dream state, a house can be a reflection of a person or an identity, for example, could also have feelings dependent upon our relationship to the house, reflective of our own interpretation of that, a place of safety, a sanctuary for some. Others, it might not be that. And so when we look at it, then it really comes down to a sense of how we relate to, interpret, and perceive, right? And so a vehicle, for example, an issue with a vehicle could be a vehicle not just in physical form, though that is absolutely the harbinger of these messages for me. And it can also be the vehicle that I ride within in life. And often when I have, for example, a client who has some kind of issue with their vehicle, then I will take a moment to ask questions about, usually career is the vehicle that we are driving in, and what's happening with that. And so for me, then there's something that I'm missing in the current vehicle that I'm traveling within. And if I think about that, then right rear passenger brake. So just kind of sit with that. Generally speaking, if I were to look at the right-hand side for a person, then that would be the masculine. So that's movement, forward movement, or at least the attempt to pushing in a way that in this case is tied to the brake. So capacity to stop and the need to change that out. Brake pads, not knowing a whole lot about cars, are supporting in with the process of slowing, and helps to create a little bit of a buffer, right? And so something's going on then with the vehicle that I'm traveling within, which could be this aspect of that of an influencer, that of a consultant, that of a teacher. Now, when I say that, I listen to my own body's kinesthetic awareness, which is my secondary. This is me just kind of processing stuff as I sit here. Then I would say a part that comes up with that is that there's a piece of it at the very foundation of my current vehicle, aka platform, that requires my attention because I'm missing it. If I wasn't missing it, then it wouldn't be materializing in the world outside of me, if that makes sense. We can have an idea about certain things. We can be aware of certain areas, yet each and every one of us have a blind spot. And that's good, because we're not meant to see and to know all, right? And so being able to attend to how, via this whole concept of universal correspondence, and let's just say that that is how the world around us brings attention to the world within, And in today's events, for example, this vehicle thing, then tying to something that is foundational to my platform that is not working well and is actually affecting how I can not just move forward with this, also requires me to come to a full stop. Because unless I do, I'm going to continue to grind on these brake pads, right? And it's going to make that horrific. It sounds pretty bad. It sounds like metal grinding on metal, grinding on more metal. And so it's going to require a full stop, taking a moment to address what's there and to be able to better move forward with it, and to do so in a way that has both the longevity of this platform, of this vehicle, as well as the capacity to kind of take a break a little bit. And so when this happens, at least generally speaking, I'll take a moment to tune into what feels right with the initial senses. I'll go through like a tarot card reading, and then I'll kind of just talk it out like I'm doing now. And so all of that feels pretty good. And so what I'm going to do with that then is I've already scheduled the appointment for next week. I'm going to give I have a Kia Telluride. And let me tell you, it rides well. It's a great vehicle, which is funny because it's relatively new and I haven't really had any issues with it. So I'm glad that I'm nipping this in the bud, or in this case, the break. And I will take a closer look on all the things in front of me and where this most can be applied to. However, that ties directly into the whole process of awakenings to begin with, right? And if you haven't seen it yet, I do a video on the whole process of an awakening, in which there are 4 components to it. There is the initiation, which is stage 1. Stage 2 goes into the reckoning. Stage 3, the emergence, and stage 4, the assimilation. So this is really that initiation phase, when there is a pattern of my past that I am not aware of making its way into my present moment. And I've missed the cues. I've been unattentive to the signs prior to. And so all of that energy begins to accrue. It builds and it builds and it builds. And it now is materializing in my external reality. It's kind of like, going someplace and going to the bathroom, and I've got like a piece of toilet paper on my shoe and I have no idea that it's there. And I'm walking around, I'm strutting my stuff, and someone sees it, taps me on the shoulders like, "Hey buddy, you might want to do something about that." And I look down, I'm like, "Oh, I probably should," right? I'm just unaware of it. It's a blind spot. And so it materializes because I haven't been attentive to it. And so now I can be. And that's all it is. Whether we're talking about synchronicities and these events, which really transpire ever and always on our behalf, on us to discern what it is that we are going to do with it, or because it's not always exclusive, what happens when we identify our own lives as a waking dream, and in that then acknowledge that the things that are happening are not just happening for us, they are happening through us. And that brings up a really interesting concept about the nature of reality. What is awareness? What is consciousness? Yet we don't need to go into all that to just say that the events of our lives have meaning, and that when we are really attentive to what is happening, not just it's happening to me, it's happening. There are these 2 aspects to it. This is from a personal development seminar years back, yet incredibly valuable, that there is the realm of event and there is the realm of, the realm of event and the realm of now. realm of value and the realm of now. And so there can be a value that I attach, right? Oh no, now this is happening. Oh, how's this? The monkey mind loves that shit. And so, yeah, and I definitely was going through my spiral. I was like, oh no, this is happening. Like, and then I took a moment after a while and was like, okay, not a lot I can do about it now. I've done my part with scheduling this. This is happening for a reason. My part is being able to slow things down, to exercise some perspective, and to feel into what that might be. And so, in doing so, what if we apply that to everything? What if we apply that to all aspects of life instead of something happening to me, which goes into very much a victim mentality, to shift into just being observant of it. I mean, we are human beings, and part of being human is feeling shit. And so that's a part of it. These things that trigger things that allow those parts, very much like the ocean. When I go to the water, sometimes you can see 15 feet down, like the visibility is incredible. And then the tides begin to change. And all of that sediment that's been sitting peacefully at the bottom of that 15-foot depth begins to stir. And all of a sudden, that visibility dwindles from 15 to 10, from 10 to 7, from 7 feet to 4 feet. And all of a sudden, you're not able to see, 4 feet in front of you, which in the ocean is pretty eerie. In any case, it allows us a moment to observe, to become aware, to feel into things. And by no means am I saying not to feel into our emotions, because that only pushes shit down. And we want to be able to feel what we're experiencing and at the same time exercise a broader perspective. And so that's wherein lies the opportunity with this whole concept of universal correspondences, how the happenings of everyday life can reveal what's happening in our own lives. And there's something very magical about that. Synchronicities as well. In any case, I could talk on and on about all of that. However, I still got a meeting to prepare for tomorrow morning. So I'm going to finish off that so I can get my butt to sleep. Thanks for joining and entertaining some thoughts with these wonderful wonderings. Love and aloha.